So my girlfriend was like, hey, can you debunk Gojo versus Makima? Because I don't think she loses to him, actually. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's do it.
First time I heard that one! Lying about flying!
These two paranormal mentors are so strong that they change the very worlds they exist in.
I'm like 90% certain the only reason people want to see these two fight is because they're both hot. Which, I mean...
You crying?
I get it.
Limitless grants Gojo a nigh-perfect defense by actualizing the very concept of infinity. As the difference between himself and an object decreases, Limitless halves the object's velocity. It's like Zeno's paradox.
This is actually a good explanation of Limitless. It's not perfect. More accurately, Gojo bends space-time around himself to slow something down to the point where it never reaches him, which you can learn more about if you watch Goku vs. Gojo on my channel. Highly recommend.
By combining Reversal Red and Lapse Blue, Gojo creates Hollow Purple, an enormous ball of curse energy that literally applies the concept of zero to an opponent, crushing and repelling them into nothing.
This is only partly accurate. Hollow Purple is the combination of red and blue, red basically being push and blue being pull. Gojo's abilities work on the atomic level, so what's happening with Hollow Purple is that your atoms are being pushed and pulled in all different directions, which would scramble your atoms across space. Basically, you'd be reduced to nothingness. This is important because Death Battle is going to treat it like an instant delete button later, and it's not. We established this in Goku vs. Gojo, which I just can't stop recommending.
Oh wait, except for Gojo, who has done it multiple times in a row.
If you look up in that top corner right there, you'll see that they're mentioning Sukuna dodging EM waves. This comes from chapter 237 of JJK, where Sukuna supposedly dodges EM waves. However, the same panel that gives the EM waves explanation also mentions sound waves. Assuming these are sound waves, not EM waves, that would massively downscale Sukuna in terms of speed, and would be far more consistent in terms of JJK speed scaling. Sukuna is able to dodge Piercing Blood, which is stated to move at Mach 1 or exceed Mach 1, depending on your translation. Top tier JJK characters are hyping up speeds like Mach 3, and even Hikari needed infinite cursed energy to dodge lightning and still lost an arm doing so. Even assuming Gojo and Sukuna scale above Jackpot Hikari, they would need to scale several tiers above Jackpot Hikari in order for this scaling to make any sense. For comparison, lightning moves at 270,000 miles per hour, or roughly Mach 351. The speed of light is Mach 874,000. Gojo is consistently stated to be the strongest sorcerer and likely scales above Jackpot Hikari. But in order for this line of scaling to make any sense, Gojo would have to be 2,490 times faster than Jackpot Hikari. At that point, no one in the main cast would be able to do anything to Sukuna, considering most of them scale below Jackpot Hikari. Yeah. I'm all for Wank, but Wank needs to at least be consistent.
He outran sonic explosions and applied cursed energy within a microsecond.
See, even they agree with me. Mach 248 is significantly more consistent than Mach fucking 800,000.
Gojo has been repeatedly stated by many to be the strongest sorcerer there is.
That includes his ex-student Hikari, who can dodge lightning.
They left out the missing an arm part, but I'll let it slide.
Like when she forced Japan's prime minister into a contract that states, and I quote, any attack made on her will be changed into appropriate illnesses or accidents among Japanese citizens.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Gojo was obviously stronger too.
I do agree with this, not the scaling they presented, but the overall statement of Gojo being stronger. Dagon's domain has an entire island inside of it, along with water around that island. In JJK, your domain represents your inner ability, so in order to do that, Dagon would need to be island level, and everyone above Dagon would scale to that as well. Gojo is consistently stated to be the strongest sorcerer, so he would scale above island level. And if you think this little action highlight here is a star, which I do not, but if you think that, then go off, I guess. But most JJK characters sit pretty comfortably around island level, and there's not really much upscaling from that. Makima's best feats put her at city level, max, and that's actually where most Chainsaw Man characters sit, with the exceptions of a couple characters in Part 2, but Makima's not in Part 2, and would not scale to Part 2, so it doesn't really matter.
However, considering she reacted to the Gundevil fragment, Makima would actually be a bit faster, though she would need to be able to get past Limitless for her speed to matter.
While I don't entirely agree with the numbers they provided, I do agree with the assertion that Makima would be faster than Gojo. Unless you buy into Gojo wank and you think he's faster than light or infinite speed, so on and so forth, he would sit below the Gun Devil in terms of speed, and Makima would be faster than that. And I also agree with the notion that you can't necessarily just speed blitz Limitless, even if Makima does hold the speed advantage.
But Gojo would obviously lose if he couldn't permanently kill Makima.
The moment Unlimited Void landed, Makima would be stuck, opening her up for a good old hollow purple.
This is where my main problem with the episode comes in, because this all relies on Makima being able to be killed by Hollow Purple, 1, and 2, not having any counters to Gojo's domain expansion, both of which can be explained.
Her contract isn't perfect. Makima only ever regenerated as long as there was some mass to come back from.
But Hollow Purple disintegrates anything it touches to 0. Literally. There's no way she was regenerating from that.
Except none of this has really been stated. I explained Hollow Purple a bit earlier, and there's a more in-depth explanation on my Goku vs. Gojo video, but in short, it's not an instant delete button. It scrambles your atoms by pushing and pulling them in all different directions. It is literally the combination of push and pull. Red and blue. Plus, curses like Hanami, who can use reverse curse technique very easily, manage to regenerate from Hollow Purple. And even if you want to ignore that, Makima's regeneration is never stated to require any part of her to still exist. It's never really implied she works like Cell or Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z, where both of those characters need at least one part of themselves to exist in order to regenerate from that. Something you have to keep in mind is that Makima's regeneration doesn't work like traditional regeneration seen in Wolverine and Cell from Dragon Ball Z. It's damage transference, which works completely differently. And even assuming that it did work like those characters, Wolverine has regenerated from a single drop of blood, and Cell was able to regenerate from just his nucleus. So even if Makima's atoms were scrambled, they would likely just reform, and some poor Japanese citizen would be scrambled up instead. So not only does Hollow Purple not erase things from existence like they are asserting, but Makima's regeneration is not as nerfed as they are assuming, which crosses Hollow Purple out as a viable win con for Gojo. And if Gojo can't kill Makima, then that pretty much only leaves one thing for him to do, and that's his domain expansion. However, even that has technically some problems with it, and we will explore that right now.
Unlimited Void overloads its target with unlimited information.
This is a gross oversimplification. Unlimited Void has a set speed. In 1/10 of a second, 3 months of information is injected into your brain. This information is then exaggerated by Gojo's domain to appear infinite. It's not actually infinite. To steal an example from the manga, if you saw an apple in Gojo's domain, you would infinitely perceive the letter A, then P, P again, LE, and so on, with months to even years worth of information being injected into your mind in mere seconds, and then being exaggerated to infinity. If you do consider domain expansion to be an attack, then Makima would absolutely be able to deal with this. Currently, the population of Japan is 124 million, assuming 0.1 seconds is all it takes for each one of their brains to get fried. That would still give Makima over 143 days inside of Gojo's domain before she kicks the bucket herself, giving Makima more than enough time to just murder Gojo instantly.
We can compare this to the Doll Devil, who was defeated by a technique similar to Unlimited Void.
Despite being able to transfer her mind across a large number of hosts, the Doll Devil was still trying to transfer infinite information across finite people.
This is a good comparison. I do think it's very clever to do so, but it's not a perfect comparison. Total understanding of everything in the universe is a little different from being forcefully injected with months or years of information being stretched out and exaggerated to infinity. On top of that, the Doll Devil had a substantially smaller pool of people to pull from, and the effects of Halloween appear to be instant, whereas Unlimited Void has a set speed. This might be a pretty good example of what would happen if Makima got hit with Halloween, but it's not equivalent to Unlimited Void.
This was one of the craziest fights we've ever had. However, with Gojo's raw power, broken counters, and unbelievably busted Limitless, Makima lost control over this fight.
To be fair, given the nature of Gojo's abilities, I do definitely see him being able to take this if you interpret some things a little differently from how I do. I'm not going to sit here and say that my interpretation of Gojo's abilities is 100% correct or right all the time, and you could definitely argue that he could win if you want to take his abilities a little more literally. In conclusion,
We already know the smell of a